I am Tiago Gonçalves, an airline pilot whose roots trace back to virtual aviation. Follow along as I try to make the simulation world as real as possible. Hello everyone and welcome back. Today we will look at the preparation for arrival, descent, approach, landing and parking.
30, 20, retard, re-10, 5.
The goal is to have the preparation and briefing completed before your top of descent. You do not want to be in the middle of your descent dealing with ATC, weather and traffic, while at the same time preparing and briefing. You don't want that. You must plan to have everything ready 80 miles or 10 minutes before your top of descent. I recommend starting our preparation around 160 miles prior top of descent. Pilot flying takes ATC communications while PM checks the latest ATCs. If not available, PM can request the latest weather information from ATC. After weather received, PF hands over control to PM and will start by checking landing performance if the conditions changed from the ones used during dispatch. Then PF does the FMGS preparation and this flows as a top hat. Flight plan, check or set the landing runway and approach procedure, arrival and transition if any. Set your run navs as required to support your planning. Check and set progress page. Set or update performance page for your descent, arrival and go around. Fuel prediction. Check your fuel reserves and secondary flight plan. You can either prepare for a different possible arrival or approach or prepare it for a single engine go around. After FMGS setup, check landing elevation, set auto brake and perform your landing or your approach briefing. During descent and approach, usually pilot flying uses performance or progress page and PM uses flight plan page. Around 20 minutes before landing, PM advises cabin crew to prepare the cabin for landing and set seatbelt sign on. Passing transition level, PF calls transition and both set their baro setting accordingly, just like during the climb phase. When below transition, PF calls for approach checklist. Passing 10,000 feet AAL, there's the 10,000 descent flow. PM, set the landing lights on, cycle seatbelt sign, and both pilots use constraints on their AFIS control panel. LS on in case of ILS approach, and PM continues by using terrain on his side if weather is not a threat. Checks RadNav identification and engine mode as required. PF checks nav accuracy on progress page. For approach, between 20 to 15 miles away from landing, check approach phase is active either on performance or progress page and use manage speed if no speed control for approach.
2500.
Configure on schedule, and when PF requests gear down, PM sets gear down, arms spoilers and set runway turn off on and nose lights taxi. Aim to be stable the latest by 1000 feet AAL. Remember, a successful landing starts with a stable approach.
1000.
PM monitors approach and should call out any excessive deviations. PM monitors the auto callouts or call 100 above and minimums.
Approaching 05 left.
$500. $100 above. $400. Minimum. $300. $200. $100. 50, 40, 30, 20, 10, retard, 5.
During landing, PM checks and announces spoilers on lower ECAM, reverse green on upper ECAM, and decel when deceleration is felt. Passing 70 knots, announce it, which is a trigger for PF to use no more than idle reverse. If PF intends to vacate at a high exit speed taxiway, he can start steering away from the runway centerline at 50 knots, while maintaining constant deceleration, aiming to be at 30 knots maximum as you enter the taxiway, as you reach the edge of the runway. If vacating at a 90-degree angle taxiway, reduce your speed to maximum 10 knots before steering away from the centerline. After runway vacated, PF sets or delegates external lights to be set, strobes auto and landing lights off. Then, do not rush for your after landing flow. First things first. Contact ground and get your taxi clearance. When both pilots are aware of the taxi clearance and agree with it, then you can start with your after landing flow. PF is taxiing, so all it does is disarm the spoilers, which will trigger the PM flow. Whether in PWS off, engine mode normal, retract flaps if no contamination, TCAS standby, and start APU. Anti-ice is required. If you have a long taxi, you may delay the APU start to before reaching the gate. Once everything is done, PF calls for after landing checklist. Just before turning inbound or parking, PF set or delegate external lights, which are runway turn off and nose lights off, and check brake accumulator pressure. Once inbound, maximum speed is 5 knots. As PF brings the aircraft to a stop, apply parking brake and check pressure indicator. PM set APU bleed on and PF stop the engines with engine masters off. Set seatbelts off. When both engines are confirmed spooling down, set beacon off. When PF sets seatbelts off, triggers PM to set all fuel pumps off, ATC 2000 standby or as required, IRS performance check on your FMGS, check fuel quantity and status. If you're going for another flight, you can proceed with the cockpit preparation. Only the start items are required since you are on a transit. If you won't be flying again, after all post-flight duties, it's time for securing the aircraft. PF checks or set parking brake on and set all ADIRs off. PM sets crew oxygen off, all external lights off, APU bleed off, external power use if available, APU master off, emergency exit lights off, signs off and all batteries off. PF then calls for securing the aircraft checklist. Alright, this is the end of the first series. Thank you so much for watching. As always, I truly hope you enjoyed and learned something new. Now, it's time to finally move to the new Microsoft Flight Sim. See you in the next video. You have controls.